Let me tell you about the dumbest thing I ever did to a Ford. I stretched one oil change. Just one. I was busy, the dash said I still had life left, and I told myself a few extra weeks wouldn't matter. Here's what nobody tells you. On a turbocharged Ford, that one lazy decision is exactly how a $40 job turns into a bill with 4 digits on it. I learned that the expensive way, so you don't have to. And here's the part that should genuinely scare you. The turbo on your EcoBoost spins at over 150,000 RPM, some of them past 300,000, and it rides on nothing but a thin film of your engine oil. That same oil is the only thing cooling it while exhaust gas roars past at over 1,800 degrees. When that oil breaks down, or you leave it in too long, the turbo doesn't get a warning. It just starts dying, and it takes your wallet with it. Let's get into it. Let me set the scene, because the mistake didn't feel like a mistake at the time. I had the right truck, an EcoBoost, and I even had good intentions, but I did 2 things wrong that stacked. First, I let the interval run long, trusting the little oil life percentage on the dash like it was gospel. And second, earlier that year I'd grabbed a jug of oil that was the right weight but not the right Ford spec. It was cheaper and it was right there on the shelf. Neither one felt like a big deal in the moment. Together they were quietly setting up the exact failure I'm about to walk you through. Now let me show you why it matters and then exactly how to never repeat it. Let's clear up why oil is a life or death on these engines' furs. Your turbocharger is the fastest spinning, hottest part of your entire engine. To survive that, it can't ride on normal bearings, they'd tear themselves apart. Instead, it floats on a constantly pumped film of oil that does 2 jobs at once. It lubricates the shaft so it can spin that fast, and it carries away the ferocious heat. So your oil isn't just lubrication on a turbo engine, it's the turbo's coolant too. The moment that oil isn't clean, isn't flowing, or breaks down from heat, the single most stressed part of your engine loses both its lubrication and its cooling at the same time. And here's the exact thing that killed mine. It's called coking. When a turbo runs hot and the oil feeding it is old or sitting still, that oil literally bakes onto the metal, turning into hard carbon, like burnt-on grease in a pan. Those deposits plug the tiny oil passages that feed the bearings. Once those clog, the bearings get starved, and a part spinning over 150,000 times a minute with no oil doesn't last long. That's not a slow leak you notice. That's a countdown you can't hear. And there's a slower killer running in parallel, sludge. When oil gets old or you do a lot of short trips, it never gets hot enough to burn off fuel and moisture, and it thickens into a tar-like sludge. That sludge blocks your oil pump pickup screen and your oil galleries, choking off flow to the whole engine, not just the turbo. Mechanics have story after story of engines that got sludged up quietly for years. Then they died on one long drive, when all that gunk finally clogged the pickup and starved everything at once. That's the pattern. Small neglect, invisible for a long time, then sudden catastrophic failure. Let's actually do it. Here's exactly how you avoid my mistake. Number 1. Use the exact oil your Ford calls for, not just the right weight. This was my first error. On most modern EcoBoost trucks, the 2.7 and the 3.5, that's a full synthetic 5W30. But here's the key detail I ignored. It has to meet Ford's own specification, printed as a WSS code on the back of the bottle. The 5.0 V8 and some other engines use 5W20, a completely different oil, so you can't even trust that your buddy's Ford takes the same jug as yours. The weight printed big on the front of the jug is not enough. I mean, you have to match the Ford spec on the back, because that exact formulation is what protects your turbo bearings, your timing chain, and your cam phasers. And here's the kicker that makes my mistake so dumb. The correct oil and the wrong oil sit on the same shelf for nearly the same price. There is zero reason to guess, and I guessed anyway. Number 2, change it on time and know your real interval, not just the one the dash guesses. This was my second error, trusting that oil life percentage like it was gospel. Ford's oil life monitor can let you go up to a year or 10,000 miles, but here's what they don't say loudly. That number is the absolute maximum under ideal conditions, and almost nobody drives in ideal conditions. If you tow, sit in stop-and-go traffic, take a lot of short trips, drive dusty or gravel roads, or deal with extreme heat or cold, you're in what Ford itself calls severe service. Your real interval drops to closer to 5,000 miles. Here's an EcoBoost specific catch on top of that. These direct injected engines wash a little raw fuel past the rings into the oil, especially on short cold trips, and that fuel thins the oil out and breaks it down faster than normal. So on one of these engines, changing your oil early isn't paranoid or wasteful. It's just understanding how your specific engine actually works. Number 3, actually check your oil between changes and learn to read what it's telling you. Pull the dipstick on level ground with the engine off and cooled for a few minutes. Wipe it, push it all the way back in, pull it again, and look. You're watching for 2 danger signs. If the level is dropping between changes, your engine is burning or leaking oil, and running low is one of the fastest ways to starve that turbo of its lifeline. If the level is instead rising and the dipstick smells like gasoline, that's the fuel dilution I mentioned, and it means that oil needs to come out now, not at some future mileage. And if it ever looks milky or tan, like coffee with cream, stop, because that can mean coolant is leaking into your oil, which is a completely separate and serious emergency. 30 seconds with a dipstick in a parking lot tells you more about your engine's actual health than that dashboard percentage ever will. Now here's the bonus mistake, the one that turned my problem from expensive into catastrophic. I ignored the warning signs, and I want you to learn about these, because catching them is the difference between a cheap fix and a new engine. Sign 1. And this is the big red one, literally. If your oil pressure light comes on, the red one shaped like an old-fashioned oil can, do not drive to the next exit, do not finish your errand. Pull over safely and shut the engine off right then. That light means your engine may be running with little or no oil pressure at all, and metal on metal starts almost instantly. An engine can destroy itself in a matter of minutes with that light on. And here's the part people get wrong. That red oil pressure light is not the same thing as the oil change reminder message on your screen. One is a gentle maintenance nudge you've got weeks to deal with. The other is a 5-alarm fire that means stop the engine now. Know which is which before it ever happens, because in the moment is a terrible time to be guessing. Sign 2. New noises that weren't there before. A healthy turbo makes a smooth, soft whoosh. A dying one starts to whine or whistle. A high-pitched siren that climbs with your RPM, and that sound means the bearings are wearing and the shaft is starting to wobble in its housing. Learn what yours normally sounds like, so you notice when it changes. On the 3.5 EcoBoost specifically, there's another one to know. A rattle for just the first second or two on a cold start is a classic early warning that your timing chain is stretching. Fresh, correct oil can quiet a mild one for a while, which is exactly how it lulls you. But if that rattle is getting louder or lasting longer than a second or two, that chain can eventually jump time and bend your valves. And now you're not talking about a chain, you're talking about a full rebuild. Sign 3, smoke and smell. If you see blue-gray smoke from your exhaust, especially when you get on the throttle, that's oil burning where it shouldn't, often through worn turbo seals. Pair that with an oily smell or oil showing up in your intake piping, and your turbo is telling you it's on the way out. Here's the thing about all 3 of these signs, they show up while the repair is still small. I heard mine and I told myself it was probably nothing. That story cost me thousands. And one free habit that helps prevent the coking I described earlier. After you've been towing or driving hard, let the engine idle for 30 seconds to a minute before you shut it off, so oil keeps flowing and cools that turbo down instead of leaving it to bake. And on a cold start, give it a moment before you get on the boost, so the oil is actually flowing first. To be fair, after gentle around-town driving, you don't need to sit there idling forever. Modern coolant-cooled turbos handle that fine. But after a hard pull or a heavy load, those few seconds are genuinely worth it. So let me put real numbers on why this matters, because this is the part I wish someone had shown me before I got lazy. A proper full synthetic Ford spec oil change costs around $40 to $100 and less if you do it yourself in the driveway. Now here's what that little job is actually protecting. One single turbo on an F-150 runs roughly $1,500 to $2,000 to replace, and the 3.5 has 2 of them, so you can double that number. A timing chain job with the cam phasers can run anywhere from $2,500 to over $6,000. And a sludged, starved, or seized engine, a full replacement, is commonly $4,000 to $10,000 or more, depending on the truck. That's the entire math of this video in one breath. A $70 oil change is the single cheapest insurance you will ever buy on a $10,000 engine. I paid the expensive side of that equation, so you'd never have to. Now here's the honest part, because I'm not here to scare you into paranoia. Modern synthetic oil is genuinely excellent, and you do not need magic additives or the most expensive boutique brand. A budget oil that actually meets your Ford spec and gets changed on time is completely fine. This was never about spending more, it was about spending correctly. And not every noise means doom. A brief tick on a cold start can be normal as the system builds pressure. A cheap boost hose can leak and mimic a dying turbo. The point of this video isn't panic. It's getting things checked while they're cheap, instead of doing what I did and hoping they'd go away. And here's why it all comes back to that one decision. Every catastrophic version of this started as a cheap one. The stretched interval becomes the sludge. The wrong oil becomes the coked turbo. The ignored whine becomes the rebuild. Every single one was a $40 fix, wearing a disguise right up until it wasn't. The owners who keep their EcoBoost past 200,000 miles aren't lucky. They're just the ones who never talked themselves into skipping the small thing, the way I did. So, let's bring it all together so you never repeat my mistake. Use the exact Ford spec oil, not just the right weight. Change it on your real interval, closer to 5,000 miles if you drive hard or short. Check your dipstick between changes and learn to read it. And never, ever ignore an oil light, a new whine, or a cold start rattle. Do those, and the turbo that scared me will just quietly do its job for years. Exactly like it's supposed to. If this saved you from making the mistake I made, do me a favor and subscribe.